Well, it is I, Robin, here again for another story time. I know my last couple have been kind of motivational and whatnot, but this one is more a documentary of the poor choices that I have made in my life, which have led me to this point. So, if you know me, which most of you probably don't, I am a very injury-prone person. I tend to hurt myself a lot, and sometimes it's not my fault. Sometimes it is. Most of the time it's just really unfortunate. So, thinking about this, I've decided to go at it chronologically in order of what happened to me first, and then proceeding through my life to the point I'm at now, where I'm almost 30 years old at the time of this recording. I will be 30 probably by the time this comes out, so yay. Essentially what happened was my very first major injury that I endured was a concussion. And I got this concussion in a kind of non-standard way where you'd be like, wow, that's random and very unfortunate. Because I got this concussion when I was in 5th grade and I was high jumping. Not in a competition, but like practicing the high jump, because when you're 10 years old in grade 5, you high jump and do all the other track and field sports that could get you going to the Olympics. Obviously, I never did. Wasn't that good. But I had this thing where I jumped far. Not because I wanted to, but because I was 10 and didn't know any better. So I was going up to the bar. It wasn't really a challenging jump, but I decided to just overshoot it because why not? And I threw myself probably too late over top of the bar, and I cleared the bar. Everything went fine there. But what happened after that, I overcleared the bar. I overcleared the mat, so I was no longer landing on the big soft pad that they have for you to land on. I over-rotated, so my foot hit the bar that was holding up, or I guess it hit the beam that was holding up the bar that I had just jumped over, and then I hit the ground with my head first. So my head hit the ground. There's like little kind of small mats that they put around just in case. They don't really do much to cushion. So I hit my head on the ground. That hurt. And then a second later, this bar that was holding up, or this post that was holding up the bar that I jumped over, that I had just kicked with my feet, also hit me in the head. And all I remember is opening my eyes. My feet are kind of over my head. I'm looking between my legs, and everyone is kind of standing around. And I was like, wow, that sucked. So I got up. I was okay-ish. And the teacher told me, okay, well, you should go lie down, which, if you know concussions, is a mistake. I went and laid down in the library and was like, yeah, nope, I hurt a lot. And so I went to the hospital, and I had successfully concussed myself and obviously lost consciousness. So that was one of the first major injuries I had in my life. I mean, that was also followed by a very unfortunate circumstance where I was in the hospital, and this little girl who was the child of one of my parents' friends came, and she felt bad for me because I was in the hospital. I concussed myself. She brought me cookies. But unfortunately, when you're concussed, a lot of times your stomach really doesn't want to accept food. And at that time, my stomach really did not want to accept food. So I didn't want to be rude, and I was like, oh yeah, thank you for the cookies. I took a bite of one. And as I swallowed that bite of cookie, my face turned green. And I am so thankful that her mom saw my face turn green, saw that I was about to throw up, and got her out of the room. Like, oh, we should give him some rest. And then I proceeded to throw up in the garbage can. So that was the first of one of my many, many injuries along my lifetime. My second injury that I specifically recall was my knees. So when I was in high school now, well, not necessarily high school, I guess technically 9th grade. So I was in 9th grade, I was playing basketball. I was pretty good at basketball. I mean, I'm not going to toot my own horn or anything, but I think I was pretty good at basketball. I was playing a lot of basketball, and because I was playing a lot of basketball, I was on what we called the junior and the senior team. So the senior team you can play on for 4 years, and because I was in 9th grade and I was a promising junior, they bumped me up to the senior team. And so I practiced with them, I played with them just to get experience on the team. And because I was practicing with the junior and the senior and playing with the junior and the senior, I was practicing 5 times a week. I was playing 2 games a week plus a tournament sometimes on weekends, and that's not good to do to your body when you're in 9th grade, because that's a lot of stress that you put on your knees, specifically because basketball is a very intensive sport on your knees. And what happened was, unbeknownst to me at the time, I have just recently found this out through physiotherapy, but I was cutting away at the cartilage under my kneecaps because my knees were not sliding properly over top of the bones. They were going a little bit sideways, and then they were taking off tiny little bits of cartilage gradually. And so over the course of that year, my knees started to give me pain and progressively got worse and worse, till the point where after a game, I would be in crippling pain where I could not walk. I was nauseous because I was in so much pain, and I could not jump. I didn't know why, and I went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, oh, it's just growing pains. So that's another thing I realized about that situation is self-advocacy is very important, but unfortunately my parents didn't know what was going on, and neither did I. So if you are hurting and it's not normal and it's not just something that goes away, get it looked at. It'll affect you later in life. That was my second injury of many. My third injury happened when I was also in grade 9. I was trying out for the football team, and this was in tryouts actually. We were doing a drill where you get tossed the ball and then you run and try to break a tackle or take a tackle in a proper way. But because I'd never played football before and I was trying out for the team, I took the tackle, and the guy who was tackling me also didn't know how to tackle properly. So his helmet hit my elbow, and I'm not sure if it actually did or not, but it most likely fractured my elbow at the time. So that's fun. I had it in a cast for a number of weeks, and I was left-handed for a couple months. Now, after that, I was in grade 10. My next injury happens when I was in grade 10, which is kind of a double header, which if you've seen some of the older videos you know about, but if this is one of your first videos and you found my wife's channel through her pregnancy video, you may not know that when I was in grade 10, I played basketball again. My knees were better at this time because I had given them time to rest, and I was wearing knee braces fairly consistently. Now, we were playing in what would happen to be our final game of the year, so I was not one of the main players on the team, but I played a lot that game because we weren't doing very well. I mean, obviously it ended up being the last game of the year, and I was upset that we lost, and I was upset that I wasn't playing very well. So I, being a arrogant teenager, went up and I jumped and I tried to hang on to the rim, because at this time I could jump and hang on, and that summer I'd be able to dunk. But I went, jumped, hung on the rim, and because I had just played a lot of basketball, my hands were very sweaty. I swung about horizontal, and my hand ended up slipping off the rim. And so as my hand slipped off the rim, I tried to break my fall on the ground with my hand, which ended up breaking my wrist. And obviously, when you break your wrist, you don't have strength in it to break your fall. So my face followed afterwards, and I smashed my face into my hand, breaking my nose as well. Something I give my dad grief for anytime this comes up is that he was convinced that I didn't break my wrist, I just dislocated it, and so he tried to give her a couple tugs to relocate it. Obviously didn't work, my wrist was indeed broken, but he wasn't convinced at the time, and so we went out to supper after the game, and about an hour later, after we had finished supper at a sit-down restaurant, we ended up going to the hospital where they x-rayed my wrist, and it turned out indeed it was broken. So that again made me left-handed for the second time in 2 years. And the nose wasn't too bad at that point. I continued playing, which was fine. It didn't get too badly out of shape, but there was a summer that we were playing basketball again, and I was getting ready for a summer camp that we were going to in Washington State at the University of Gonzaga, for basketball camp, and a friend of mine had the ball and I was guarding him, and he has very long, gangly arms. I shouldn't say gangly. My friend has very long arms, and he swung the ball across his head. And because he has very long arms, his elbow caught me in the face, but not just the face, specifically the nose, and it severely broke my nose. And this was about the summer between grade 11 and grade 12. And it severely broke my nose to the point where I had to get it put back into place, which I did in a mirror. And after that, I went to the hospital, but the hospital, because I had already put my nose back into place, didn't want to touch my nose again, which I was very frustrated about because 8 years later, I ended up having to have surgery so that I could regain most of my sense of smell and the use of both of my nostrils. But yeah, that time my nose broke pretty severely. Now, after that, in my grade 12 year, I decided I would play football again, because most of my friends were playing football, and they decided that if they were playing basketball, I should play football too. So I obliged them, and I joined the football team. And as we were practicing one day, close to the end of the season, I was bending down to grab a football off of the ground in a drill, and one of the younger players on the team decided it would be funny if he just kind of like body checked me into the ground, which is a very bad idea. Never do that. Never throw yourself around when someone is in a compromised position like that, because I ended up tearing both of my rotator cuffs in my shoulder, which plagued me for at least 3 years. They didn't fully heal until I had stopped playing college basketball. Rotator cuffs are not a fun thing to deal with. So that was at the beginning of my grade 12 year, and yeah, it sucked. Sucked a lot. I couldn't lift my arms above my shoulders. Those were the rotator cuffs that I tore. So, as I mentioned earlier, I played college basketball. So I went to college, played basketball there for 3 seasons. And in one of those seasons, I think it was my second season, I jumped up to grab a rebound. And as I grabbed the ball and came down to the floor, there was someone else's foot underneath my foot. So what happened was my foot landed on this other person's foot, obviously not a stable surface. My foot turned sideways and my ankle hit the ground before my foot. I tore quite a few ligaments in my ankle. My ankle swelled up a lot, like a lot. And I'm fairly certain that was the beginning of my ankle weakening to the point where I now have tendonitis in that ankle. So, take care of your ankles. Also in my college basketball, I ended up getting shoved and I got pushed to the ground pretty hard. And I ended up chipping a bone in my other elbow that wasn't fractured when I was in grade 9. So both of my elbows have issues now. And when I was also in college, I spent a lot of time studying. And when you study, you can get bored of sitting in the same position. And so I decided that I would sit on my bed a lot rather than just at a desk. But because I have some genetic issues with sciatic nerves, I ended up pinching my sciatic nerve quite a lot, where I had to go to the hospital to get anti-inflammatories so that my sciatic nerve would calm down enough to let me sit down and study. So take care of yourself. It's not a fun thing to deal with when you deal with nerve pain like that. I now have to go to the chiropractor fairly regularly so that my body doesn't hurt me. And lastly, during my time working, doing concrete, I was doing some insulation on the very top of a building in a man basket, which was lifted up to the top of this building. And it was just high enough that I would clip my head on the beams overhead where we were insulating. And because I'm used to how tall I am, without a hard hat, I was walking under these beams not thinking, hey, they'll hit my head. I walked under it pretty quickly and I successfully concussed myself while wearing a hard hat because I was wearing a hard hat. So I've had multiple concussions, multiple elbow injuries, and yeah, suffice it to say, I tend to get hurt a lot. I'm trying not to do so much now, but sometimes it's just out of your control. Like I said, some of it was my fault, some of it was other people's, most of it was just unfortunate. So, if I could say anything here to close out this video and this recollection of my very wonderful injuries. It is, take care of your bodies. It's gonna come back to haunt you if you don't. Yeah. So, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. And if you do, subscribe to my wife for more of her and occasionally me. Okay, bye.